The reason State Route 71 pilots were required to have a family was not technical but psychological. Flying the world's fastest and highest jet meant extreme danger, secrecy, and stress. The U.S. Air Force believed that men with families were more stable, responsible, and less likely to take reckless risks. A family gave them balance, emotional strength, and a strong reason to stay grounded while performing one of the most dangerous jobs of the Cold War. Hello everyone, welcome back to the World Conflict Monitor channel. Please subscribe to my channel for more in-depth explanations of the world's most mysterious aircrafts, wars, and defense secrets. Today we are going to uncover a fascinating question: why did State Route 71 pilots have to have a family? At first, this requirement may sound unusual, even strange. Why would a country like the United States, which had the most advanced aircraft in the world, care about whether its pilots were married or had children? But once we go deeper into the story, the reasoning becomes very clear, and it reveals how dangerous, sensitive, and unique the State Route 71 Blackbird really was. The State Route 71 Blackbird is one of the most legendary aircraft in aviation history. Designed during the Cold War by Lockheed's Skunk Works division under the genius of Clarence Kelly Johnson, this jet could fly at speeds above Mach 3 and at altitudes exceeding 85,000 feet. Its purpose was to spy on enemy nations without being caught. It could outrun missiles, radar, and even enemy interceptors. To fly this aircraft was both an honor and a burden, because it demanded absolute perfection from its pilots. And that is where the family requirement comes in. The United States Air Force believed that only men with families could handle the mental stress of flying the most secretive and dangerous missions of the Cold War. They needed people who were not only technically skilled but also emotionally grounded. A family meant responsibility, stability, and maturity. From the exterior, the State Route 71 Blackbird looked like something from the future. Its sleek, sharp, needle-like nose, long fuselage, and wide wingspan gave it an almost alien appearance. Built primarily from titanium, it was resistant to the extreme heat caused by flying at 3 times the speed of sound. The exterior was coated in black paint mixed with radar-absorbing iron ferrite particles, which reduced its radar cross-section and gave it its famous nickname, the Blackbird. Every panel, every rivet, and every joint was designed with precision, because at such high speeds, even the smallest imperfection could tear the aircraft apart. For the pilot, sitting in front of this aircraft on the runway was like staring at the edge of human engineering. And the Air Force wanted only the most trustworthy individuals with strong character to sit inside. On the interior, the cockpit was very different from what many might expect today. It was compact, tight, and filled with analog gauges, dials, and switches. The environment was not designed for comfort, it was designed for survival. The pilots wore full-pressure suits similar to astronaut suits, complete with helmets and oxygen supply systems, because at altitudes above 80,000 feet, the human body could not survive without them. Communication was limited, and visibility was narrow. Inside the cockpit, the pilot and reconnaissance systems officer had to work in complete synchronization. Missions often lasted several hours, and during that time, there was no room for distraction. That is why the Air Force wanted pilots who were stable, disciplined, and emotionally balanced, qualities that came naturally from having a family life back home. The short interior story is simple. The cockpit was like a space capsule, and only someone with a stable personal life could handle that isolation and pressure. When we look at performance, the State Route 71 was unmatched in its era. It could cruise at speeds of Mach 3.2, meaning it traveled more than 2,000 miles per hour. At this speed, the aircraft's skin would heat up to over 600 degrees Fahrenheit. Most aircraft would melt at this temperature, but the Blackbird was built to endure it. Its engines, the Pratt & Whitney J58 turbojets, were a marvel of engineering. They worked both as traditional jet engines and as ramjets at higher speeds, giving the aircraft unmatched performance. It could fly across continents in just a few hours, taking detailed photos of enemy installations without ever being shot down. In fact, no state Route 71 was ever lost to enemy fire. This performance made it the crown jewel of American reconnaissance, but it also meant that the pilots were constantly pushing the limits of what was humanly possible. That level of stress required not only skill but also mental resilience, and family was considered the anchor for that resilience. Safety features in the state Route 71 were not about comfort, they were about survival. The pilots' pressure suits doubled as full life support systems, keeping them alive if they had to eject at extreme altitudes. The cockpit had specialized systems to handle the rapid changes in pressure and temperature. Even the ejection seats were designed to function at Mach 3 speeds, something no other aircraft had attempted. But despite all these measures, the risk was always there. If anything went wrong at 80,000 feet, survival was uncertain. That is why the Air Force looked for pilots who understood risk, who respected responsibility, and who had families to return to. A man with a family was seen as less likely to take reckless chances and more likely to make sound decisions under stress. The unique selling points of the state Route 71 Blackbird were clear: unmatched speed, altitude, and stealth for its time. It could outrun any missile, fly higher than any enemy aircraft, and gather intelligence with cameras so advanced that they could read license plates from 80,000 feet. But beyond technology, its uniqueness also lay in the pilots who flew it. These were not ordinary men, they were carefully selected, highly trained, and required to have families to ensure their psychological stability. In other words, the state Route 71 program did not just rely on engineering, it relied on human reliability. And that human factor is what truly set the Blackbird apart. When we talk about price, the state Route 71 was incredibly expensive. Each aircraft cost around $34 million in the 1960s, which would be hundreds of millions in today's dollars. Its operations and maintenance were also extremely costly, requiring specialized fuel, titanium parts, and highly skilled crews. The Air Force invested not only money but also trust in the men who flew it. That trust is why the family requirement existed. It was not just about the machine, it was about ensuring the pilot was someone dependable, someone grounded in responsibility, and someone who valued life enough to avoid unnecessary risks. In conclusion, the requirement for state Route 71 pilots to have families was not random. It was a carefully thought-out decision by the United States Air Force. The state Route 71 Blackbird was not just an aircraft, it was a weapon of intelligence, a guardian of national security, and a symbol of Cold War power. To fly it meant putting your life at risk on every mission, handling extreme stress, and carrying the weight of national secrets. The Air Force believed that only men with families could truly handle that responsibility, because a family gave them balance, purpose, and the mental strength to survive the most dangerous job in aviation. And that is why state Route 71 pilots had to have a family. This explanation shows us that behind every piece of technology, no matter how advanced, there are human beings. The state Route 71 was fast, powerful, and nearly invincible, but its success depended on pilots who were grounded in their humanity. And sometimes, being grounded simply meant having a family to go home to.